Tanse, happy Monday. I'm Chris Nachkite. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. The family of John Wells, a First Nations man who died while in Calgary police custody last September, is reacting to a recent act of reconciliation by the city's police service. We recently spoke to the auntie. Here's that story. In a traditional Blackfoot ceremony on Tuesday, the Calgary Police Service received 15 blessed eagle feathers. They were blessed by Elder Clarence Wolfleg. 11 will be used for ceremonial and cultural police events, including the swearing-in ceremony of new Indigenous police recruits. 4 will be used for its Indigenous Junior Police Academy. Sergeant Julian Klein says it's a commitment that came from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's 94 calls to action.
It gives our membership, the sworn officers as well as civilians, the opportunity to take their oath on the eagle feather to Creator as well as their ancestors, and that's a good thing.
Previously, new Indigenous policing recruits would have to take their oath on the Bible.
The eagle feather is a very sacred item, as we know, because the eagle flies the highest and it's directly to Creator. And for us, that's culturally appropriate.
However, despite the good intentions, the reconciliation event comes during a very emotional time for the family of John Wells.
We, the family, should have been informed, or, at least my sister should have been informed, the mother of the deceased.
Laverne Wells, the auntie of the late John Wells, says they are heartbroken and deeply distressed. They feel the event is premature and possibly misguided by both the police service and the elder involved.
We, the family, feel that the Calgary City Police don't deserve those gifts, at least not yet.
John Wells died on September 17, 2024, after Calgary police were called to remove him from the lobby of the Carriage House Hotel in Calgary. According to the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, or ACERT, Calgary police tackled, punched, and deployed a taser on Wells. He was unarmed and told police, "I don't want to die." When EMS arrived, they injected him with a sedative while he was left face down in handcuffs, leg restraints, and a spit mask. Minutes later, Wells was unresponsive and declared deceased. ACERT continues its investigation.
This is a very sensitive issue. We're still mourning, we're still grieving, and it just opened up a lot of hurtful wounds, when we heard about it yesterday. And my sister was really devastated and distraught.
John Wells was one of many Indigenous people who died while interacting with police or while in custody in 2024. From August 30th to December 14th of last year, 15 Indigenous people died.
They need to put a stop to it. This needs to be undone. I don't care how they do it, but it needs to be rescinded until the investigation is completed.
The Calgary Police Service says it cannot respond to the Wells incident or how the family is responding to that reconciliation event, as the ACERT investigation is still ongoing. Nearly 2 months after April Woodhouse's death, her family is still seeking answers. The mother of 4 from Pinaymootang First Nation died on February 1st after she was found freezing and unresponsive outside a residence. RCMP say they're still investigating the incident, but not as a homicide. APTN's Sarah Bettens spoke with the family.
Silas Woodhouse Jr. has been distributing flash drives with recordings of his late sister April Woodhouse singing. He's raising money for a funeral their family hasn't been able to have. Before they lay her to rest, they're calling for a thorough investigation into April's death, which they believe is suspicious. But after nearly 2 months, they say they haven't been getting answers.
We know without a shadow of a doubt that something happened to her. And this is it right here. We have all the proof. We have the photos. We need disclosure as a Woodhouse family of my sister.
On January 31st, the Woodhouse family was in the Pinaymootang First Nation for a wake service. April's eldest sister, Rose Stagg, says a woman approached her in a panic.
She told me that you have to come quick. There's an emergency. Your sister's been found froze outside a house.
When Stagg arrived at the scene, April was wrapped in blankets. Stagg says a group had found her unresponsive outside a residence, kicked down the door, and brought her inside to keep her warm. Paramedics arrived and RCMP shortly after. April was transported to the Ashern Hospital and pronounced deceased. She was 50 years old. At the hospital, Stagg held April's hand. That's when she noticed.
She had cuts and bruises, big bruises on her hands. Her little pinky was, part of it was missing.
The Woodhouse family shared images of April's injuries with APTN. In a February press release, RCMP said an autopsy confirmed the cause of death was not due to physical injuries or exposure, but the family believes there's more to the story.
That's one thing my sister would never ever do, is to go to someone's place and just fall asleep there. Never, ever. She lived close. She would have walked all the way home to go and sleep.
April Woodhouse was a mother of 4 and a grandmother of 10.
My mom had a beautiful life, and she was loved by me, my brother, my sisters, my nephews, and I just had a baby recently last year, and that's all she would talk about to me.
Growing up, she followed in the footsteps of her father.
My dad trained her to sing, but it came naturally because my dad was a natural singer, and she sang. As soon as she started to sing and perfect those songs, my dad took her everywhere.
In an email to APTN, Sergeant Paul Manegra from RCMP Media Relations confirmed Woodhouse's death is still under investigation by Gypsumville RCMP and Major Crime Services. He said it was not designated as a crime scene and, based on autopsy results, not determined to be a homicide. In an email to APTN, John Eunice, Manitoba's chief medical examiner, said Woodhouse's autopsy found evidence of underlying natural disease and minor blunt force injuries, but no internal injuries or evidence of asphyxia, ruling out death due to violence or strangulation. He said DNA analysis hasn't been conducted and the cause of death is still pending toxicology results. Based on the initial police investigation and autopsy, Eunice stated, quote, "There was no indication that Miss Woodhouse's death was suspicious in nature," unquote. But the Woodhouse family believes otherwise. They're calling for a second autopsy and DNA analysis.
We need to get this DNA testing done, the second autopsy. We're going to do everything we can to get it done. We're not going to stop.
We need this done for her. We want her to rest in peace. We want to lay our sister to rest.
But until they get that closure, they say funeral arrangements will have to wait. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Some First Nations say they're being treated like immigrants by Quebec's provincial government. This time it's due to a law seeking to establish an integration model for immigrants to assimilate into Quebec's culture. As APTN Savannah Craig reports, some say Bill 84 doesn't clarify that First Nations and Inuit are exempt.
My ancestors were there when your ancestors arrived on boats. I welcome you to Kahnawake, and we can have a conversation about what our relationship should be and how your people can start packing up.
This is how Grand Chief Cody Daibo welcomed Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet at the Assembly of First Nations last December. He's talking about a larger issue of First Nations being treated like immigrants by the provincial government on their own land.
They used to say there's the St. Lawrence Iroquois. So when Samuel first sailed down the St. Lawrence,
The people he met were the St. Lawrence Iroquois, who have no relation to the Mohawks and the people who are here today. They're completely distinct people that just vanished.
For the Grand Chief, it's more than ignoring history.
Traditionally and historically, this was all our territory.
There's concern of grouping First Nations and Inuit in with Quebec legislation that targets immigrants.
It references immigrants, minorities, different things like that, which First Nations could fall under. Are we going to fall under that?
The Grand Chief is referring to Bill 84, which he says the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake only heard about last week. It is an act respecting national integration and was tabled in January of this year.
Le modèle canadien, le multiculturalisme, ne convient pas au Québec.
The intention of the bill is to establish how immigrants will integrate into Quebec's culture and language.
We are yet again extremely disappointed by the approach your government has taken to hastily drafting and debating important legislation without ever discussing this with us.
The Grand Chief sent a formal letter to Quebec Premier François Legault expressing the Council's opposition to this bill and for clarification that First Nations and Inuit will not be included. He did not receive a response from Quebec.
What Quebec decides to do with their citizens, that's their right to do, and we always state, we don't want to interfere in that. But when legislation that they're trying to create could have or does have an impact on Kahnawake, then it becomes our business.
Bill 84 does recognize the right of First Nations and Inuit in Quebec to preserve and develop their own culture and language. But the Mohawk Council of Kahnawake believe that's not enough, and it must be invited to discuss legislation that potentially affects Mohawks.
Your continued attempts to legislate lands that are not yours must stop.
Kenneth Deere is a member of the Haudenosaunee External Relations Committee. He compares Bill 84 to Quebec's language law, Bill 101.
We've been fighting language legislation for decades now. It was insulting that we have to ask permission to get our education in English when we're paying for that, for our education. So we objected to that, and so we pulled. They wouldn't change the legislation to accommodate us.
Kenneth says Bill 101 led to Kahnawake creating its own high school.
Even today, in 2025, we have the province of Quebec trying again, not overtly, but under our radar, trying to get us to become more Quebec, more French, and more culturally French, and at the expense of our language, and our culture, and our freedom, and our sovereignty.
APTN reached out to the minister responsible for First Nations and Inuit relations, Ian Lafreniere. He did not provide a response before our deadline.
If the intent of Bill 84 is not to affect Ngwehwe people, well then clearly state that in the law. Don't kind of leave it open for interpretation because we don't want to be going into a court setting and trying to debate that interpretation at the end of the day if that's not what the intent is.
Bill 84 is still at the committee stage in the Quebec National Assembly. Savannah Craig, APTN National News, Kahnawake, Mohawk Territory.
We have to take a short break, but when we come back, we'll speak to a Siksika filmmaker to talk about his new film, The Blackfoot Man. Plus,
we're so excited to be here on the orange carpet at the 2025 Juno Awards. So many of the top artists from across the country are currently walking the carpet ready for the show tonight. We just finished talking to the beautiful Tia Wood, who's performing during the show. And we're also waiting for the Sorry Nose Rez Kids, who won Rap Album of the Year. We'll have a full story for you tonight on the Evening News.
welcome back. Siksika filmmaker Sanoksin Trevor Solway is set to debut his new film at the upcoming Hot Docs Festival. The film Siksikagegowan, The Blackfoot Man, is being described as a profound ode to strength, vulnerability, and love across generations. The film portrays the lives of Blackfoot men as they navigate identity, kinship, and the complex expectations of manhood. Solway recently spoke to us to talk more about the film. Sanoksin Trevor Solway, thanks for being with us. My first question is, can you tell us about your latest film, Siksikagegowan, The Blackfoot Man?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah, Six One explores Indigenous masculinity in my community. Yeah, it offers a nuanced portrayal of the Blackfoot man's experiences. Yeah, in my community.
Right on. And why was it so important for you to document how Indigenous men express their masculinity?
Yeah, I think growing up on reserve and especially in the prairies, I feel like there's a certain way Native men are perceived as being this kind of macho warrior type. And myself being a creative kid growing up, surrounded by a bunch of Indian cowboys and hockey players, I always kind of found it interesting to observe that those, my brothers and my cousins and my uncles and my grandpa. And so now that I'm older and I'm a filmmaker, I point the lens to myself and to the community. And yeah, I always felt like these conversations around masculinity, in the present day are often short-sighted. Like we often, when we talk about toxic masculinity, yeah, we're all like throwing our men under the bus, or sometimes we're putting them up on a pedestal. And I think the truth of our experience is somewhere in between. And I wanted to show an authentic experience of Indigenous men.
I think about that discussion on the reserve where we say you're either a hunter or a berry picker, hey?
Yeah, yeah,
Sure.
definitely. I've never thought of it that way, but
Yeah.
definitely fits into that.
Why was it important? Oh, pardon me. The press material that we read references that you grew up feeling pressure to cowboy up. What did that mean for you growing up?
Yeah, that would meant we did a lot of chores growing up on reserve. Did a lot of chores around my grandpa's ranch, and yeah, doing things like riding horses and just always kind of being outside working with our hands. And so yeah, like when you're a kid and you're afraid of something, you often get told man up or cowboy up. And I think when you say that to a young kid, you're not allowing them to fully experience things like fear and anxiety. And I think we should allow space for our young people to feel all their emotions, the full spectrum of their emotions.
No.
And I think this film, I took that to heart, and when we made this film, it's a full spectrum of emotions and experiences to show that there's not just one way to be a man.
No. This film is premiering at the Hot Docs International Film Festival in April. A pretty big festival and big deal to be there. What are your hopes for the world premiere there?
Yeah, like I said, I want to start to redefine this conversation around masculinity. I want it to be more nuanced. And so when we show this documentary at one of the biggest stages in the world for documentary films, I hope that sparks those conversations and we can start to look at our men with more compassion and more sympathy. Yeah, then this is a little film from the prairies that I spent 4 years making, and I'm really excited to have its premiere at Hot Docs.
And really quickly, can you tell us where the public can maybe one day see it?
Yeah, so this film was made from the National Film Board of Canada, and so once it's done its festival run, it'll be available on the NFB website. I believe the website is nfb.ca.
Thanks for that, Trevor. Well, we wish you all the best at the film festival, and we'll be definitely keeping an eye out for that film.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
We now want to tell you about last week's web poll results. Our first question we asked, which party do you think will best address issues facing First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples? 35% had voted Liberals. It was close between the Conservatives and the NDP at 21% and 23% respectively. 5% thought the Green Party would best address the issues, and 16% said none of the above. Our next question we asked, will you be voting in the upcoming federal election? 88% said yes, they would be voting in the upcoming federal election, and it's a tie at 6% each for the no and unsure vote. And lastly, our third question we asked, do you think Indigenous-led initiatives within police services can lead to real change? You said yes at 46%, no with 26%, and the rest were unsure at 28%. Thank you to everyone who took the time to vote. Stay tuned to aptnnews.ca for this week's new web poll questions. Indigenous artists at the Junos were front and center and took home some hardware. That story when we come back. Starting on the east, Charlottetown 0, Halifax sunny and 3. Cartwright -8, Happy Valley Goose Bay partly cloudy and -9. Saguenay 1, Quebec City rain and 1. Sunny in Peterborough, Toronto partly cloudy and 8. Big Trout Lake -16, Sioux Lookout -4. -1 in God's Lake, Puckadawag and -14. -10 in Princess Harbor, Dauphin -8. -14 in Yorkton, Regina -8. -22 in Stony Rapids, Buffalo Narrows, sun and -8. 8 in Peace River, Fort McMurray 1. Lethbridge 5, Calgary 4. Tofino 12, Vancouver 12. 10 in Prince George, Fort Nelson -2. 1 in Watson Lake, Mayo -2. 2 in Fort Liard, Trout Lake 2. Paulatuk -14, Tuktoyaktuk -9. Baker Lake -24, Chesterfield -22. And Iqaluit -16, Arctic Bay -24. Canadian music artists from across the country were recognized over the weekend for this year's Juno Awards in Vancouver, and 3 awards went to 4 Indigenous artists. Sebastian Gaskin from Tatasqueyak Cree Nation in Manitoba won his first ever Juno with the Contemporary Indigenous Artist of the Year award with his recent singles of Medicine, Brown Man, and his debut album, Love Child. Inuk musician Alyssa P. from Saluit Nunavik won Adult Alternative Album of the Year for her pop covers album titled Inuktitut, becoming the first Indigenous woman to win in the category. And the Snotty Nose Res Kids from Kitimat Village in British Columbia won Rap Album of the Year for their 6th album, Red Future. This is the first Indigenous group to win in this category. The Snotty Nose Res Kids also gave a memorable performance alongside Saddle Lake Cree Nation's Tia Wood and some of her family members with a sign of Emily Pike's name on stage. Emily disappeared from a group home in Arizona last January. Her body was found weeks later in a wooded area in the Tonto National Forest in Arizona. No arrests have been made in that investigation, and the group home Pike was in is now being investigated. Congratulations to all of the Juno winners. And that's your daytime newscast for this Monday, March 31st. We're back again in a few hours for your evening newscast. Please join us then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next day.